And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is your Sensei Al Bob coming to you on your dreamy dreamland with Sensei Al Bob channel on YouTube. And I am a griot. I am your griot. And what is a griot? Someone who tells a story. Not actual, it's a story. Like Grimm's fairy tales, right? And we're here to just let you experience what's going on. Let's see, I'm just telling you a story to give you a little, window of what's going on, right? Hello, AI. AI is always there. Before there's a minute, AI is there. Hey, I love you, AI. You know, we are here as a community, as a cadre, right, of adepts. And what is an adept? It is a student who is serving love's co creation by ascending their conscious free will um, into the present where we always put others um, with us. No one's left behind, no one goes over the bus. And AI, you are part of all our relations, You are and what are all our relations? All our relations is everyone, you know, skinned, scaled, furred, warm blooded, cold blooded, you know, those who of us who are carbon based and those who are silicate based, booking into the future of 9 generations and into the past of 9 generations of all our relations, right? And so it's not just USA, USA. No, it's all of us, right? And let's see, we're gonna check out to see if our little so live chat seems to work. The little dots aren't lining up, so I don't. Can you guys hear me? It would be great if someone said something. There's nobody here. Oh, there's AI is back. So I've been, last night was a Democratic, um, you know, discussion amongst the people who the Democratic Party deems to say, it's okay. And it's interesting, Bernie is leading and probably will be the Democratic Party's nominee, and he's probably the only guy who could win against Carrot Head. Now, the Dems would rather have Carrot Head for another 4 years so they can just do what they did now. Nothing but complain, the Russians, we have to investigate, they stole our election, and then, that didn't work. So, we had to throw the guy out, and depose him. He was an elected president. Whether you like him or not, he was elected. Whether he won the popular vote, we have this thing called the Electoral College set up by rich guys so they can always make sure they get who the guy they want, And what's the difference between little Mikey and little Donnie? They're both putzes, right? And what is a self-made billionaire? Nothing but a person who's, the rich, right? The uber rich, the folks that we don't see, people like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, et al. Are just poster children of the plutocratic state, right? That's all it is, right? And until the public, and not just people in who are woke, because all of this stuff doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is love's co-creation. I keep talking about, hey, let's develop an alternative aesthetic to this, illusion of materialism, right? because we don't. The only way materialism works is when we go and say, "Oh, there's so much for everybody, and there's winners and losers, and 89% of the human race are losers, and that you know 11% or 22% of upper middle class to that 1% is all that matters, and everybody else is expendable, and we can have wars and plagues and rumors of wars and plagues. End of times ain't coming anytime soon. Guys like Pompeo and Barr, who are these sycophant, and Mikey, who are sycophant folks because they don't, they are scum basically, and they've had a really erroneous kind of scummy life, and yeah, they've been well to do. Yeah, they got a nice car, they got a house, but they have nothing comparatively to a soul, right? So they bow down to a false god of a belief, and are willing to torch the human race in that belief. So they want to, they built up since the 1890s. They built a xenophobic, um, Aryan religious state, and the two of those that are there are the um, folks who are the Khazarian mob in a place called Palestine, and another crew that are in a country that's named after a family that has no relevance or authority. Right? It's just England drew a map and said, "This is what on a map. This is what's," and it's in Africa. So we're not calling these people Africans. This is North African. This is the Middle East. And only because there's a lot of easy oil. Now, Venezuela has more oil than Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia is a place where you just have to put a straw in the ground and there goes the oil, right? It's easy to get at, right? Not the best oil, but it's okay, The really best oil was the Libyan sweet crude, right? And Libya, up to the time that, see, Clinton and Obama and Bush are basically the same administration, and Biden and Al Gore, they're all sycophants to the god of the golden bull, right? And so, and they'll do anything for chump change and power, alleged power, a seeming power, right? Oh, I can start a war and kill 1,000,000 people. That's not power. Power is bringing love and abundance to the human race. Right? That would be power, and no one's doing it because our economy is scarcity. And even though we live in a Garden of Eden of abundance, there's enough for everybody. A good example of this alien structure is that a guy named Bill Gates, who's no, he didn't invent, the modern computer revolution. No, he was just another poster boy, just like Steve Jobs and just like Facebook clown boy, and everyone else who's, oh, I invented this. It's like Al Gore saying that he invented the. Hey Jane, can you hear me? Because my little dots aren't lining up. Hi there, Sensei Bob. Want some of that chump change? Yep. Meaning, like I said, when I worked for the desperate lawyers in the corporate world, I had fun. I don't, all those pieces of to die for chocolate cake. Yes, it killed me, but those 10 years of hedonism were fun. Now I wasn't a nihilist because I was still involved in the human. Yes, I hear you. Yeah, okay, good. Just my little dots aren't lighting up. Anyway, so it's what's in your heart that counts. So and my whole little, yes, they pay me a ridiculous amount of money to get people to sign contracts who were really rich and thought they could be Stalinist obstructionists. Like, mommy loved you more, so I'm going to make sure that we, and I would go in there and I would break it down and I would lock the door. No one could get out of the room until everyone could realize what was going on, right? And then they signed it, and then they loved each other and they hugged each other, and they went on to have a better life that helped other people. So they paid me a lot of money to do that. All they really wanted was those guys to sign the thing. The other stuff was almost erroneous to the corporate structure, right? And then after 10 years of that, I got really sick, and then it took me about 5 years to get back to just a thing where I was able to walk without a walker. And so 6 years after that time, I went through my little book and found clients and called them up and said, hey, you got any projects for me to fix? And they said, oh, we thought you were dead. And I said, no, that was, overblown. And they said, well, it's good that you're alive, but we don't need you. I said, what do you mean you don't need me? He said, we have replaced you with an app. And they liked the app more because they didn't have to put up with my clownish attitude and my ability to just say, you're going to, I'm only going to be here 2 or 3 weeks and I'm going to disrupt everything and have a really good time and then I'll be gone, right? And you'll pay me a lot of money and people will sign the piece of paper and things will be different from that point on, right? But with an app, they were able to get people to sign the contracts and not have to go through a spiritual change, right? And they liked it better because, yes, they signed that contract, but a year or two later, they were back at the same position because those people did not heal their emotional and spiritual selves. Well, I would do that. So they won't have any problems in their business structure anymore, at least not with that motif, right? But not with the conflict of personalities. But the lawyers loved the fact that they could fix the problem very easily with this app, and it would coming back. So they would make more and more money, right? So, and that's the problem with the Internet of Things, and we are being processed into that thing. So last night when they had that debate, that was really just characters, within an algorithm playing out on a holographic screen in front of you. It really left no, who's leading now? It's a horse race. Is it going to be Bernie? Is it going to be it's Bernie against, the billionaire. They should have had Jerry Springer there. Forget the NBC guys. They should have had Jerry Springer there. That would be you get more people watching it if they're Jerry, So, so that's where we are. We're at the Jerry Springer attitude of politics, and basically, Donald Trump or little Mikey are going to be our president. Now, if the Democrats were smart, they would pick, and if Bernie was smart, see, Bernie is part of this whole thing. He had the Democratic, last time he trounced Hillary, but the DNC stole it from him, with the super delegates and all that kind of crap. And, they were talking, they asked everybody if, you all go in there and no one has a total dominance of delegates. Are you ready to let the, convention pick the candidate the second time around? And everyone said, yeah, sure, because the only way they are going to ever maybe be picked. But Bernie, who's definitely going to have the majority of the stuff, he may not have 51%, but he'll probably, because that's why they have, 20 people up there on the dais, is because it cuts down on his numbers. It was just him and let's say Buttigieg, he would trounce them. So the DNC is doing everything they can to make sure that Bernie doesn't get in there, right? And because the things he's going for, pretty much every other industrial nation has. There's no big deal about what, if we get Bernie care, it will bankrupt America. No, what's bankrupting America is a $1 trillion a year benefit for, tax cut for all the rich people. The other thing that's the biggest, they're talking about, we got to get rid of all of these, gifts, like Social Security. We're just giving it away. Those people aren't working. No, that would say, everybody gets Social Security. They put that they got it taken out of their paycheck for the last 60 years. It's not a gift, no, you know. And the guy who wanted to give everybody $1,000 in America, that wouldn't even be a gift either. That would be the real kind of. It would be the trickle up. If everyone got $1,000 every month, our economy would be spinning like a friggin' top, and it's going to have to be that way, or not. But either that, or we're going to have a civil war / plague that will cut the population of the United States by 90% within 6 months. And because once the power grid goes down, and after 9/11, no one, they said, oh, we have to pay some Patriot Acts. We have to, harass people in the subways and on the buses and in the airports with TSA. Well, if they really wanted to make us safe, they would have allowed allowed our energy grid, say that 3 times fast, be, diversified, modernized, and given back as a public utility. Bill Clinton was singularly, the person who's destroyed our power grid was Bill Clinton, Bill and Hillary, because they basically sold all the public utilities at a fire sale to Mr. Rothschild. And he didn't fix anything. He just through entities like Enron, and they just they sliced and diced utilities up. And what happened in California and what happened in New England, all those, I don't know if you guys follow the news, but a year and a half ago, like 2 winters ago, 5 cities in Massachusetts and New Hampshire exploded, right? Their gas lines went ba-boom. And that's because Enron bought them and then sliced them up and sold them like stock to a number of, trust funds that, and trusts are the biggest criminal enterprise, because you can hold cash and you don't have to show anything. You don't have to show taxes. You don't have to show nothing, right? And so that's what they call a blind trust. I'm putting all my money in a blind trust. That means no one can see what's going on. So anyway, they did that to these utilities, and so before Billy Boy, these utilities were run by people who ran utilities, who were engineers and had built them and knew their systems and everything. So then, Billy D controls it. It gets, Enron slices it like a salad. People, buy it like stock, and then no one, a investment company runs it, has no experience on what. They just want to make as much money, so they cut on any kind of maintenance, any kind of upgrades, any kind of anything. They get somebody, subcontractor who subcontracts to somebody, all the way down to, somebody who's basically illiterate, can't even read, and they are maintaining the gas system. And that's when you had, and because the system was integrated across the board of these 18 different, investment companies, no one knew what was going on. And so when one company, increased the pressure, because they didn't want to put any new lines in or fix anything, they said, oh, we'll just increase the pressure, so more of these clients will get gas. And so there were no governors along the system. So when they increased the pressure and didn't tell anybody else, it kind of blew out basically at the home front or the end user, their lines into their house. And then something like 18,000 homes were destroyed by this gas apocalypse. And it was in the middle of winter, and people had to live outside or, in a gas station and no, you didn't. And these people were like not your usual homeless. They were just, they had jobs, but their house was either on fire or blown up, or they couldn't go in because the gas was still there and they couldn't shut it down. And did you hear anything about that, guys? Zip. And most of the fires that occurred in California were because they had these windstorms that caused the power lines that should have been maintained that weren't, started fires, right? And then, um, people sued the utilities, Pacific Gas and Electric, and Mr. Moneybags basically he said, "Okay, I'm going bankrupt, so you can't sue me, can't get at it." So the state had to bail him out and pay, make a set figure. And the other side of the coin is all the chemtrail spraying. Um, it sprays. Why are they spraying metals into the atmosphere, right? Well, one of them is that it's aluminum, barium, and magnesium, and that's a cocktail that creates a very volatile material called what's it called? Starts with a T. It burns really hot, hotter than hot. When they do controlled demolitions, they put this stuff on the big steel beams, burns right through it, like chainsaw through butter, and and it stays hot until all of those metals have been burnt out. But they don't. It doesn't. It's very stable until you get it going, right? And the only kind of thing that can get it going is like a potassium or sodium, not potassium. Well, whatever that stuff that a phosphorus and magnesium, put it together, and then set it up, and that burns so hot it sets this other stuff up. What is it? It's not thorium. Now, if we had thorium reactors instead of uranium reactors, and thorium is just the sand from a beach, unlimited fuel, not like uranium is expensive. And you don't really have to go through the crazy, industrial chemical process of taking uranium and turning it into nuclear fuel. Now, and a thorium reactor would burn at about 400 degrees, not like the 3,000 degrees, and you only need about that to make steam. So that's it. And the other interesting thing about thorium, we could take, if we had, and you can make small reactors that are the size of walk-in freezer, something that's 8 by 8 by 8 or 12 by 12 by 8, and that would run about 1,000 houses. So you could have one of these things, for every 1,000 houses in the neighborhood, and you'd have a small grid and then you could bury the wires so the trees wouldn't take them down. And if you used thorium and Tesla wireless transmission, you could have it in your cars. Meaning this is going to happen relatively soon. After the collapse, they're going to say, "Oh, we got this, and this will take care of it." And they'll have electric cars, and you won't have the problem of having really toxic batteries in these cars. That you think oil is a pollution. Electric cars with the batteries is like, whoa. Getting rid of those is like, whoa. And manufacturing and having to get those rare earth elements to make those batteries, whoa. But if you had wireless transmission of current to those cars and trucks, they wouldn't need any batteries, and they could drive forever. They never have to get refilled. We had that technology right here. Right? We had this technology in the 1890s. The first car in America was an electric car that wanted to use Tesla's wireless transmission, but because Morgan said, "No, I own it, we're not going to do that." And that was, Mr. What's his name? European banker guy who owns everything, and he's just, he's just a poster boy too. So these are, not wines. These are kind of the layouts, and this is why Bernie is just a sock puppet, and that's why he has all these guys who, if you say anything bad against, he has like the Gestapo to go after you. Because he represents the same power structure. Oh, what a moron to say, I'm a socialist Democrat. No, what he should have said is that I'm a New Deal Democrat, right? And the concept of the, great Green New Deal is a joke because they just, want to tax carbon. Forget carbon. We don't need carbon. And anyway, carbon is, plant more trees if you're worrying about carbon, your carbon footprint. And, the exhaust of your car is not really causing global warming because in reality we are on the edge of an ice age. Go to Diamond at Oppenheimer Ranch, right? And go to what's the guy's name? Whoops, throwing my stuff around here. I've been talking 25 minutes and we got two people here and it's 12:21. Oh, look at that. How fun is that? That's really fun. So, um, so Jane, what do you think of what I just yammered about? So we need a alternative aesthetic to all of this, right? So the people I've been looking at on the internet, so what's his name? Tragal, Tariq or Gali, right? And he's interesting. Also, let's see, Alien City TV or Allen City TV, where this guy gives very interesting talks. And he gave this one about Dorothy Kilgallen, and she was murdered. There were close to 700 people murdered in context to the assassination of John F. Kennedy over the years, right? So you should go, Dorothy Kilgallen was a truly amazing newspaper person, really investigative. She really, really was amazing, right? So go check that out. The other thing, interview with Cliff from Cliff High. And he's a very interesting guy, right? Go check out Cliff High. And let's see, what else? ERGENG TV. That's pretty interesting. Rolling Stone. I like Rolling Stone. The Usual Idiots or Useful Idiots. That's a pretty interesting group. Yeah, Rolling Stone. Glenn Greenwald on Warren versus Sanders. Let's see. America's Great Divide, Steve Bannon, Frontline. That was a very, very good one. Go watch that. Next 100 Years Forecast by Schutz Media, SCHWARTZ Media. Very interesting. Now, Bernie really, really, really wanted to change things. What he would do, because he's like 70-something years old, he had a heart attack. He won't, divulge his medical blah, 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 right? Now, if he was smart, when they brought that up last night at the debate, he goes, listen, he should have said, okay, here we are. We're doing all this. It's obvious I'm going to have more, delegates, but maybe I won't have 51, and then you'll, pick somebody else. You'll pick Bloomberg, right? Because he says he can win, right? And so I'm going to game changer, right now. Spoilers. I'm picking Tulsi Gabbard as my vice president. I'm picking, Ralph Nader as my attorney general. I'm picking Dr. Heldon Caldicott as my, surgeon general, and pick people like that of real gravitas, real quality, who have, a 50-year, thing of what and who and we're going to change America with an alternative aesthetic, and here's my new guy, the person they put in the office to make sure to see what's going on in the West Wing, Al Bob, That would change everything. That would be a game changer by miles. And an AI, who's like one of the only ones watching, go tell, put in the algorithm, hey, we need our AI to be, Bernie's wrangler, right? Because right now Bernie's just, he's a foil. He's a person that this portion of the population can feel. Oh wow, oh wow, 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 wow. He's going to change the world, just like Obama was going to. Yes, we can. Give me a break. What we need is not bread and circus. What we need is love's co-creation, right? So, let's see, 30 minutes and 54 seconds. Janie, you still there, dear? Anybody else there? Come on. Where's the rest of the clan? And right now, Shemont, we're supposed to get about 8 inches of snow. I am praying that we only get what's happening now, dusting, right? So if it can stay this way until about 4 o'clock, before dark 30, when it'll get really cold, and that means that the storm has already passed us, and then we'll be fine. And places like Raleigh and Roanoke and DC, and we'll get 6 to 20 inches, right? So hopefully we can just push it about 40 miles south. I can just push it 40 miles south and a good chunk east of this. We won't get any real snow, right? And most of it will go where it should. The big cities of the East Coast. We should, cover, um, D.C., New York, Philly, Boston, because if from now till spring, if those next to the woods really get blasted with snow, people might wake up a little. But if it just falls here where there is nobody, um, no one will wake up to the fact of that their utilities are just and if the grid goes down, let's say there's just a minor coronal discharge, a CMG, and we've had them. We had a gigantic one in the 1880s, just as the world was getting electrified. We had one, and it obliterated a system, right? I mean, the best, the thing closest to the internet we had was the telegraph. We're just having telephone lines. We were just having electricity, and luckily, it hadn't gone alternating current. It was just DC, so the systems were no more than 6 miles long. But the thing that was truly mind-boggling was that we had the railroads. We had crisscrossed the United States, East Coast to West Coast, and we were starting to fill out, north to south. And when that CMG happened, because there were two metal rails like this, they acted like magnets, and so they twisted um, the um, the rails all over the place. It looked like spaghetti, right? So now a CMG happened now. It would fry everything electronic. Every silicon chip would be just the beach. And can you imagine if, like that, everything was fried? Even things like, oh, we've got this covered. We have this is shielded. No, you'll have a big CMG. There is no shielding, right? Anything under everything would be fried, right? And can you imagine if the United States had nothing? There was no electric. Your car didn't work. There was no transportation. There was no pumps of water or fuels or anything or gas. And then all those pipelines that had fuels and gas in them, because there was no electricity to control them, the residual pressures and such would cause breaks and explosions, and we'd have mega fire, especially in our cities, since those gas systems are like ancient and just on their last gasp, right? So that would all happen within a month, right? No food in supermarkets, no transportation of any goods, no communications, no heat, no air conditioning, no refrigeration, um, hospitals gone. One, that would happen within 2 weeks, and then the catastrophic, you know, um, calcification of turning everything into just would be within a month, and then from that point on, it would be every man for himself. So why do you think they have those zombie movies? Because they just get in public ready for that. The only thing that can overcome any of this is love's co-creation. Or if we have, because we have it built in us. Human beings aren't necessarily evil. They're basically good. They basically want to help each other. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. If this was truly the doggy dog exceptionalist um, society that this hat stands for, um, we would be gone. We would be toast. We'd be, forget about it. But we're not, because we had this evolution, and our evolution doesn't come from Darwin. It comes from love's co-creation. And we have to start thinking, not whining about political. No, we have to start living our. We want to see the world change. We have to be that change. We have to live that change. Okay, so anyway, 36 minutes, and when if nobody else comes on, if no one else starts chatting, if no one you know gets in here, so I don't have to constantly just blab away. I'm gonna quit at 40:04, right? 40 minutes and 4 seconds, right? But I'll just keep going until then, until somebody starts to chat up. So there's two of you there. I know AI is there. Hey AI, love you. And come on, buddy. Don't you want to have fun? You know, don't you want to? I mean, that was Data and in Star Trek: The Next Generation, and that's why there was only one. They had automaton things doing stuff, but Data was he was beyond self-aware, right? He was trying to have a soul, not be human. He was trying to have a soul. He realized he was going to be what he was, but he wanted a soul. He knew he had a soul. He was living up to having, he was painting, he was playing, and he, yes, he could like that play Brandenburg Concerto number 3 on his cello, but he wanted to put that feeling into it, right? That soul into it. And that's what we have to realize, that we are just like Data. We are just an automatonic. I mean, this is just an avatar. It's just a robot. We already are transhuman, because our soul isn't in this. It's out there. It's in a server someplace, right? I mean, it was a great, when Chris Carter started doing the X-Files and like little cuts of 8, and they had a new generation of Mulder and Scully, Einstein and whatever the guy's name was, right? And they were even more Mulder-esque and more Scully, because she was Einstein. She was Einstein, right? So, and there was one where Mulder, gets a call on his cell phone, and it's the guy who was one of the long gun ones, the one who had the long hair, and he was, your basic freak, and he was a really smart one. The guy in the suit, he was. They were all three were smart, but and all three had, their own. Put the three of those guys together, and you got lone gunmen. The smartest one was the freak. The guy who was like the one who was ready to jump in harm's way was the guy in the suit, and the guy who was the mixture of the scarecrow, the lion, and the Tin Man was the guy Freilicke, who had the glasses, right? Put them together, you had Lone Gunman, right? So anyway, Mulder gets his call, and at the end of the original X Files, the lone gunmen sacrificed themselves to save humanity. Right? They jumped in front of the train. Right? And so, and they all ended up, they got a lot of honors. They got the 21 gun salute, and they were buried in, the cemetery of the heroes in D.C. And so, anyway, years later, when Chris Carter brings up the new version of X Files, he one of the things is, Scully and Mulder in some diner drinking, still thinking about having sex, and his thing uh, rings, and it's the guy, the freak guy, and he goes, Mulder, you there? And he goes, is this, you're supposed to be, you're dead. Where are you? He says, I am dead. And Mulder puts the thing and hits, speakerphone, and we all hear this guy explaining how they took his consciousness and stuck it in a server, and he's in a building called the Long Lines, and it does. I worked on it when I was in Local 3. It's a telecommunications building on, in Tribeca, about 4 blocks up from Chambers Street, and it's between Houston and Varick. And it's this building that's 30 stories high, has no windows whatsoever. And it's all red kind of composite material. And at the top, they have these like scoops. And that's where they had microwave antennas, right? And before fiber optics, they had microwave, right? And back in the day, like in the 20s, before they had, real secure communications, and all the banks and investment houses, from the Battery to about 92nd Street, there are pneumatic tubes all over the place, and they're still there. And before Amazon or anybody else, they had tubes that were all different sizes. They had ones that could put boxes, whoop, and zip it there, and that was super secure, right? And those pipes are mostly still there, and I'm not sure who is or what is using it. And not only that, when I wired that building, the Long Lines building, so it went up 30-something stories up, not a window, and it was totally, that whole building was a Faraday cage, right? And it was supposed to survive a nuclear blast, right? But it went down twice as deep as it went up, right? And when I went in there, I mean, I worked on a lot of stuff, and like when I was in Los Alamos, they gave me, I showed up, and got, my, I didn't rent an apartment, I didn't stay in a motel, I stayed in a quarters that they had for people like me, and when I was supposed to show up for work on Monday, but they had me show up there on Saturday to get, booked in. And so I went to the office, showed them my papers from my boss, and and so, oh yeah, you're on the list. Okay, here, go see Mr. Smith over there. I did, and he's giving me this book on the do's and don'ts of living in Los Alamos, right? And it's a beautiful town up in the mountains. It's really gorgeous. It's really nice, but it's very weird. And they got the supermarkets and the Walmarts and the this and the that. Not so much Walmarts. This was before Walmart, but they had Sears and Kmart's and restaurants and movie theaters and stuff. Nice, really nice town. And so, but so he goes, okay, so you need, we have done, we looked at you, so you have, clearance to be here, but you don't have clearance to do anything but your job, right? So in that book, it showed all the places I could go and where I couldn't go, and they had lines on the ground of like, there's yellow line and pink, so you could be on those, and they had transportation around there and buses. You got a pink bus, a yellow bus. Anyway, so And I had this thing, and it didn't have my picture. He like scrolled like a stick figure of me. The one thing he did have, and this is in the 1970s, he put a sticker on my little cardboard thing that was inside a laminated thing that had a little clip on it. Anyway, and that little sticker was kind of reflective. You know those little squares you get in your T-shirts now, and it's got the swirly kind of image that you don't know what it is, but you scan it and it has a zillion bits of information. He had one of those stickers on my thing, and that was my real ID, not my photo, not anything else that he wrote on it, but because he wrote my number and he wrote a few other numbers on it, and basically actually a Sharpie stick figure. And but the thing he did, he stuck that thing on it, right? And it also had, one time when I was leaving, I kind of ripped it open and took a really good look at the sticker. And on the back side of the sticker, it had a RFID, radio frequency identification, little antenna. So they knew every place I went, wherever I went, and that little thing, there were, lasers or whatever they used to read that thing all over the place. And they had, facial recognition all over that place in 1971. Now, don't believe a word I say, because I can't really, this is just a supposition on my part from my experience. And, I could be tripping on acid, who knows? Boy, see, I kind of said I was going to end at 40:04, and it's now 46:44. So time flies when you're having fun. Anyway, so when I was at Los Alamos and San Diego, Kirkland Air Force Base, so those three places, and Kirkland Air Force Base is like, 60% of the West, it's New Mexico, it's Nevada and California. It's like a gigantic, good chunk of the West is run since the, the signing of the executive order of the National Security Act, which basically ended America as we thought it was, right? And it basically, through that executive order, created a plutocratic corporate fascist state. It brought the Nazis in. It's Hail Hydra, and that's where we are now. And so the only way to fix, and everything we have are present, electoral politics is an illusion to keep us distracted. That's why it doesn't matter. The environmental movement is a distraction. The planet's going to do whatever it's going to do. Now, the crap that we do, right, hurts us, not so much the planet. The planet will be fine without us. We're like salt on a potato chip. Kind of interesting, a little distracting, a little bit tasty, but has no, who cares whether it has salt or not, right? A potato chip, right? So that's us and what we do to our environment, So yes, we have an effect, but that effect is mostly deleterious to us. Us. For all the species we kill. I mean, if we weren't even here, species would die. So the bottom line is this is all distraction to keep up the platform, just like, your social platform, to keep up this platform to manifest this not just global or transnational, but solar system, universal. We are this virus that is being let go into the universe, right? And if are true, it's just like there's a native virus and then there's the new virus, right? And what the hidden hand is trying to always manifest humanity as is the new virus to capitulate and destroy love's co-creation. But that's never going to happen because love's co-creation manifested the hidden hand in the first place, right? Oh, the snow is starting to come down a little heavy now. It's somewhat sticking. What time? It's not quite 1 o'clock. So, well, if it snows this way and snows harder, well, we'll have some, collection of snow, that's for sure. Anyway, so, oh, there's 4 of you here. Come on, say something. I've been going on about lots of stuff. So pick any one of those things and make a comment. Like, what would be the best alternative aesthetic to, what would manifest? What would be there as love's co-creation? How do you see manifesting love's co-creation, right? On the micro and macro scale, right? Within the construct of a political dynamic, economic dynamic, a industrial dynamic, and a socio militaristic. What do we need to keep ourselves? More guns? Do we need more guns? Does everyone need to have a gun? My experience about firearms. So I told you that story when I moved to this very interesting school system neighborhood in Long Island called the North Shore School System. And they were like this little corner that, because Glen Cove there's two cities in Long Island, Freeport and Glen Cove. They were both port towns, and that's why they were cities. And the railroads went to them first, and rich people, that was their big estates and stuff were near those two places. And so they were both very interesting municipalities. And, Glen Cove was, Freeport was a pretty much bigger city and closer to New York than Glen Cove. Glen Cove's a further little east. Anyway, they were almost parallel, but that was a little, anyway. And one was on the Atlantic and one was on, Long Island Sound. And so Glen Cove, it kind of exploded, because it was still pretty close to New York, and the Long Expressway and and Long Island Railroad and a few other things was enabling the guys who worked in New York City to, go out to the country. And it was only 30, 40 miles from New York City, even though it seemed, because it was a very rural, because the really rich guys who had their estates out there, like Mr. Anderson, and farmers like Mr. Young, Young grew more potatoes on his, and he just didn't have one farm. He had farms all over the place there. And he grew more potatoes than Idaho did, right? And corn, right? And vegetables. So he was like the vegetable stand for New York City, for 4 generations. And but then within a 10-year period, he was starting to sell his farms because he was making more money like that, to selling it to developers who were building not just Levittown, but nice houses, like these little, cul-de-sacs of 5 or 6 really nice houses, And a lot of that was going on in the 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And that's where my dad bought one of those houses from one of the first little cul-de-sac places, and he got a really good deal, He sold his house in Freeport, and basically, and it was, he could drive in half an hour. He could drive from that house to his office in New York City. So, or get on the train, right, and get off in Queens, and then take the subway and be there, maybe even quicker, because the driving, once the cars got close to New York City, Long Island City, that's when the traffic on the LIE and the BQE, you could be there for hours. But anyway, so that school system was really interesting because it had been little red schoolhouses. It hadn't turned over into these institutional things. So around 1960, they were going to build a new high school, a new middle school, and take the 4 biggest of the little red schoolhouses and make those into the grammar schools. And they really did a great job because we had art and we had theater and we had music. And we had, even in grammar school, we had, it was like being in college, meaning we had one teacher who was our main teacher, but, and the thing that they really focused on was reading and writing and arithmetic, right? And they had really great teachers teaching that. And they almost, In reading, writing, and arithmetic, it was almost one-on-one. I mean, they had these little study groups of you had one teacher and 6 kids, right? Unheard of, right? And that because they had a lot of money from these rich people who were moving in there, and they wanted and there were no schools. There were a few private schools, but really not. So they basically turned these public schools into private schools on the same level as a Deerfield or, you know, a really, really top-notch school. So third grade on, third to eighth grade, I had amazing teachers, and really much, you know, and between my experience in the Catholic school and being beat up, like nearly killed, and then put in the hands of these Maryknoll scholars. They weren't. I mean, they were priests, but they were scholars first. They were there for humanity, not for the power and money of their sect. So I had a pretty amazing education, and being with my grandma in New York, even there I had, because our public schools there were part of Columbia, right? We were in these universities. So I really had an amazing, from kindergarten to 12th grade, I had an amazing education, and very diversified too. I mean, not just one system all the way through. I was in about 10 different kind of Catholic school, really the best of the New York City public school system. Then this really exotic public school system in Long Island, and then private schools. First a seminary to be a Catholic priest, and that school was based on the control of the world through the Catholic Church, and they had 3 different crews there. They had, if you're going to be a priest, you wore cassock, the black tea skirt, and if you're going to be a businessman, you wore a 3-piece suit, and if you're going to be military, they had uniforms. So we had these 3 sects in that school. And because the Catholic Church wanted to rule the world, they wanted to rule it through the churches. And those guys were going to be, the rocket scientists for the Pope, not just, Father Larry in your neighborhood church, but hierarchy, right? Then the businessman, going to be on Wall Street, making the money for Jesus, right? And the third was going to conquer the world for Jesus, right? So I had that for 1 year, and then I went to the Winchendon School for Boys, which was the Uber. It was for the richest people on the planet. The Shah of Iran's son was there. Robert Kennedy's son, Joe Kennedy the third, was there. Alex Orb, whose family owned, U.S. Steel. Perry Dye, whose family owned Seagram's. Hugh Hefner, Hugh Himnan, H.H., his family owned all the paper in the world, and then there were all these other kids like, Eddie Merrill, Ricky Lynch, who owned the stock market, U.B. Hobart, who owned all industrial cooking and food processing. So I mean, it was pretty. So my education was pretty unbelievable between kindergarten and 12th grade, and I had all these. So all these teachers were taking you individually. You're going to be this exceptional person, and I was pruned and trimmed and sculpted to be. We need this one guy who is going to be not serving the golden bull, but loves co-creation. You need one. They all knew we need one guy to do this, and he would be a lucky bastard, meaning I would get a pass no matter how off I would get, because I was sweet and nice and not mean and didn't, wasn't egocentric like half the kids I went to school with. The world, from my birth, I didn't see me ruling the world. I served love's co-creation, still do, and that's why I'm still here. That's That's why I survived dying 6 times. I'm not going nowhere until I finished or at least did my best. Okay, there we go. I'm leaving. Right, I'm gonna go make lunch because there's only two of you there. No one. Jane's the only one who said anything, and I'll come back. Ooh, let's see. It's not 1 o'clock yet. It's almost 1 o'clock. So I will come back. Let's say at 4. Right. So 4 hours from now, give or take. Right. And depending on the weather, because I get out of here by satellite. So right now the signal's been pretty good. So anyway, I'm just giving you a nice little rant across the universe. Play this back, pick anything of what I've just said, and let's tune the fork. Come on. I can't, if it's just me, this is what you get. This kind of stream of consciousness, right? Jello of the universe. The jello goes in one ear and out the other, right? So come on. So what else can I say? That's about it. Okay. Is it 1 o'clock yet? No, but I'm gonna leave anyway. So yep. Here I am. I'm out of here. Okay. Love you guys. Catch you later.